So I'm one of those people who likes to get up extra early in the morning just so that I can enjoy the quiet before anyone else in the house needs me, and of course, enjoy my coffee. Most mornings, I come downstairs, empty the dishwasher from the night before, put in my earbuds, and listen to the news or music or even a guided meditation while I prepare food for the day ahead. It's my time to be quiet, to listen, to pray and ponder before the rest of my household, sorry Natan, and the rest of the world wakes up. I cherish this quiet time, the gift of my own silence in a world with so much noise. Like many of you, I've been preoccupied with questions of silence and speech these days. Who is speaking up and who is silent? I experience some people's silence as deafening. At other times, I observe such blatantly harmful speech that I understand the urge to refrain from speaking. I myself often ponder the risks of speaking out versus the risks of saying nothing at all. And I'm guessing I'm not alone. Particularly in the age of social media, I think a lot of us feel like we have to speak. Having grown up without social media, I can easily recall what life was like when we didn't feel the constant need to make statements and when we could create room for more silence. Elie Wiesel, of blessed memory, asserted that silence always aids the oppressor. And so I feel a moral duty to speak out. And at the same time, the Hasidic community from which Elie Wiesel descended taught the value of silence. Sama deukla mashtuka, says the Talmud. Silence is a balm for everything. And of course, not every silence means the same thing. There are different kinds of silence. Silence of absence and silence of presence. Silence of fear and silence of courage. Silence that conveys disconnection and silence that communicates deep empathy. The silence necessary for something new to be born. And perhaps one of my favorites, the silence that is required to really listen and learn from another person. But silence can also be a form of hiding. And as a person, myself, who is conflict averse by nature and nurture, sometimes I have to check in with myself and those I trust to see if my silence is more avoidant and habitual than an adaptive choice. This question of whether to speak up or remain silent came to a head for me this past year. Quick show of hands. How many of you had a friend, a coworker, an acquaintance, or a family member who's not Jewish reach out at some point after October 7th to check in with you and express loving care and concern for your well-being? Those expressions of outreach meant a lot, right? And how many of you had a friend or coworker or family member who's not Jewish fail to reach out to you post-October 7th to express loving care and concern for your well-being? Yeah. For days and weeks after October 7th, I watched in silence as a beloved friend posted daily on social media about the war in Gaza in ways that shocked and saddened me. Let me be clear, my friend's horror over the suffering of innocent Palestinians is justified. I too am devastated by this reality. I am a mother, and the maiming and death of innocent children is tragic, pure and simple. I hope I never become immune to the horror of children suffering and dying in a war zone. but the lack of nuance in her posts, her failure to acknowledge Israel's right to exist, let alone defend its people, and the absence of the plight of the hostages was deeply disturbing to me. The pain of bearing silent witness to these persistent posts took up more and more of my heart's energy, but I felt too scared to say anything. After all, I cherish my connection to this person. Even if I find her posts misguided, unbalanced, and at worst, inciting, I don't believe she's a bad person, nor do I feel she wishes me or anyone in my family harm. Quite the opposite. I truly believe she believes she is sharing in a way that will ultimately bring about more justice and peace. But in time, I decided I would rather live with the consequences of my loving and honest words than with my silence. So I pressed forward, and I wrote her despite my deep discomfort. I wrote, "The days since October 7th have weighed heavily upon me, my friends, my family, and the Jewish community I serve. I know the tragedy that continues to unfold in epic and unimaginable proportion weighs heavily on both of us. I know that our respective spiritual paths call upon us to pursue justice and empathize with all those who suffer. Yet the space between us has grown over the last many weeks, and I don't want our relationship to end. I fully understand that our tribal allegiances, personal and historical memory, and life experiences vary widely. I bear no expectation that we would agree on everything, but it's important to me that you know that while I share many of your sentiments about the war, there are numerous places of departure that I find truly disheartening and dangerous to my existence. I want to remain in connection with you, and it feels hard to do that when my fears, suffering, and presence don't seem to be a part of your field of concern. I don't have any expectation or desire to convince you of anything, only to be known and seen by you. I want to sign off with love. I don't have an answer, a request, or a conclusion for this email. Frequently these days, I'm out of words entirely, so I'm just going to trust that the honesty, sorrow, pain, and love I have shared here will find their way to your heart." What followed was an extraordinary email response, filled with love, compassion, and conviction. Our exchange became a robust conversation over coffee, which became, once again, a period of silence, albeit one which has enabled both of us to hold the other in mind with respect and empathy. My friend has gone on to post in the same vein, to pursue her understanding of what is right and just, and to speak out according to her own truth. I, of course, will do the same. And so there is a steady bridge of silence between us, but I hope it's a bridge upon which in time we'll meet up again with renewed connection. For now, the silence of distance feels more bearable and adaptive. One of the things that makes the Torah's portrayal of Abraham so fascinating is the seeming inconsistency between when Abraham speaks and when he is silent. On the one hand, Abraham is silent in response to God's very first command, Lech lecha, leave everything you know behind and go to an unknown land. Yet only a few verses later, we hear his outspoken plea on behalf of his son Yishmael. "Oh, let Yishmael live by your favor." We have Abraham's speech in protest at God's planned destruction of Sodom, which Rabbi Eric talked about yesterday, in which he calls out to the Holy One, "Far be it from you to do such a thing, to bring death upon the innocent as well as the guilty." And we have his silence in today's Torah portion when commanded to sacrifice his own son, Isaac. I don't presume to have a full answer to the problem of speech and silence right now. And it seems to me Abraham, too, was unsure. In some moments, speech is appropriate. Other moments call for silence. And as Abraham shows us, sometimes, perhaps much of the time, we may not get it right. Regularly, I have to ask myself, will I be like the Abraham who spoke up in the face of what he perceived as injustice, or will I be like the Abraham who remained silent? Because sometimes silence speaks louder than words. Discernment about whether to speak or not is in fact a spiritual practice known in Musar as Shmirat Hadibur, or mindful speech. Or in the humorous and pragmatic instructions of my beloved meditation teacher, Rabbi Sheila Peltz-Weinberg, just wait, W-A-I-T, and ask yourself, why am I talking? There's a teaching from the 20th century Hasidic master, Reb Shalom Noach, who quotes the Talmud, that on Judgment Day, when all of our actions and inactions are laid out before us, and we take account of our lives, even our superfluous words will be reported back to us. Can you imagine listening back to the recording of your life's words and hearing all the wasted words, empty promises, meaningless conversations, and mundane chatter? Oy. Can you imagine the lineup of hurtful words, direct lies and twisted truths, gossip, insults, and kvetches? Can you also imagine listening for the absences, the missed opportunities when we could have offered words of gratitude and outpourings of wonder and praise, calls for justice, restorative kindness, and loving connection? Can you imagine all the moments when silence would have been the most mindful choice, wisely embodying the holiness that the moment truly deserved? Thankfully, Rosh Hashanah and the deep prayerfulness and contemplation of all of these days of awe come to remind us that we don't have to wait for the day of judgment to practice mindful speech. We can practice it today and tomorrow and the day after that. And note that I'm using the word here, practice, quite intentionally. Practicing mindful speech, just like practicing an instrument, a craft, a sport, or a new language, means that we will make mistakes. Sometimes we'll have a great day of practice. Other days we'll miss the mark. The Jewish people love language. We are crazy about words. Trust me, it is hard to get in a word edgewise in my family. We believe that the world was created through an act of speech. And our tradition understands every subsequent act of speech as an act of profound power and possibility to create and nurture, or to destroy and hurt. And in these times of so much pain and difficulty, and in this age of so much speech, what a gift it would be if we could generate some more mindful silence for the sake of more mindful speech. In the book of Kohelet, Ecclesiastes, we read, "Et lachashot ve'et ledaber." There's a time to be silent and a time to speak. Friends, I cannot pretend to know when it's wiser to remain silent or to speak up. Every moment of every day offers us the opportunity to choose. And in particular, this past year has challenged so many of us to dig deep and discern when it is more skillful to say something, even at the risk of creating conflict with someone we hold dear, or to hold back and trust that our silence is a more powerful response. When I reached out to my friend in pain, I did so with great reluctance. I did not want to speak up. Just ask Eric. But I did it anyway, and I'm really glad I did. Interestingly, in the aftermath of our exchange of words, we reached a point in which we sensed there might not be anything extra helpful to add for now. And that's okay too. I'm willing to rest in that silence. I want to close with my adaptation of the Serenity Prayer. May its author, the 20th century theologian, Rev. Reinhold Niebuhr, graciously accept my version. God, grant me the mindfulness to know when to use my words, when to welcome silence, and the wisdom to know the difference. Shana Tova.